Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and I am with my bro Nico, who we've been friends, what, 13, 15 years?
Getting up
Jesus
there now.
Christ,
Yeah.
it's been a while. Of course, you've given me props since day one. You were in my first 10 subscribers on YouTube.
Yeah. Back in the old bodybuilding forum days, right?
Yeah, way back in the day. So if you would like to briefly introduce yourself so that people know who you are in the context of why you are qualified to even discuss bodybuilding. Uh,
Well, I guess it goes back to my competition days, which started in 1995. I was 15 years old, and I was the youngest in the Ontario Amateur Bodybuilding Association history at the time. I don't know if anybody's beaten that since, but I continued to compete in that federation for a couple of years, and then kind of got discouraged when I was about 18. I took a big break from it, continued bodybuilding, but just stayed away from the stage for a number of years, and then got back into it in my early 30s in a couple of drug-tested federations that popped up that never existed back in the 1990s. So I thought I have a easier chance there since I was always a drug-free athlete myself. And lo and behold, my first show back was with UFE, and I won the Halloween Mayhem and earned my pro card with them on my first attempt after a 13-year hiatus. So that felt pretty damn good.
right.
I continued with that federation for a couple of years as a professional, and then I switched over to the IDFA, another federation in Ontario, a drug-tested federation, and I won my pro card with that organization on my first attempt. I did a competition as a pro with them in 2014. It was the IDFA Universe where I placed third, and the guy that won it was actually an ex-IFBB pro that then later in life became a natty. So wasn't the same deal, I guess you
Yeah,
could
yeah,
say.
yeah, yeah.
Lifetime natties,
Yeah,
you know what I
when you run 2 grams of gear, there are some permanent changes.
mean. There were permanent changes, and they
Well,
stayed
you
with
would
them.
think until you see some of these retired pro bodybuilders, and you're like, they don't even look like they lift. What happened?
I know that's the guys, I guess, that went into the gym and got on their first cycle like in the first 2 weeks. They didn't have a solid base, and that's the change that you see with those guys when they come off. They all the muscle was rented muscle, and when
Right,
the rent's
right.
due, you got to pay, right?
Yeah. In
But
your case, you've been training what, 30 years?
30 plus now. I
Uh,
just passed 31 this past October, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
so
so for context, I'm going to link your social media below so that people can see what
sure.
you look like. How old are you? And
I
you're
am
40 what now?
44 now. Yeah.
44, a couple years younger than me.
Yeah,
So yeah,
catching
you're
you.
44 and you look the way that you look in on your social media. And they can see
Yeah,
videos they can see. And because a lot of my guys only care about strength.
yeah,
It's roughly tell what you lift per number, so they'll get an idea that you're not a lightweight here. You're not
yeah.
throwing around
No,
a 400 pounds on a squat.
yeah, I've done it a few times. Um, but I mean, it's something I've been doing for the majority of my life too. I can say that, I'm probably as close as I'm going to ever get to being an expert in this field. And I can't say that about too many other things that I've done in my life, but
Right.
bodybuilding, I'm definitely an expert.
Yeah. But my strength guys will respect the fact that you've pulled at least 600 pounds.
I got a 700 with straps actually at a
Okay.
competition, gym competition last year.
Okay.
And that was with five bulge disc in my lumbar spine that I've been dealing with since about
Right.
2017. So I was
Right.
thrilled to even pull that number. And that was a big day for me.
Right.
Best
Squatted
squat I
over,
ever did was
yes, in the 500s.
550.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got a 550 before. I got a 500 beltless. And never got past the 385 on the bench, though. That's always been my nemesis. And
Never got past. I've seen you rep
no,
I've seen you rep 315. So,
I can rep it out. Yeah, there's on a good day I can get about 6 or 8 on that too. So
so there you
yeah.
go. And you're doing that with abs. Like, yeah.
Yes, yeah, yeah.
So context for people listening, you have a little bit of experience here.
A little bit.
So we were talking in private, and I'm like, let's get some of this on camera. We were talking in private about the travesty of the Olympia and the nature of modern bodybuilding. And I know you personally do not like the incomplete physiques. I mean, obviously the extreme drug abuse is an issue for you because these guys are dying for a trophy.
Yeah, and I mean that was one thing that I can remember. I mean, back in the day, there was Momo Benaziza. He dropped dead in early '90s, and then Andreas Munzar. But it
Right.
was few and far between. Where
Now
nowadays,
it's all the time.
yeah, like 4 or 5 guys a year are dying, and these are the big name guys, not just like the second or third tier pros, right? But I mean, aside from the drug abuse and overuse, is the quality of the physiques have taken a downward turn over the last year.
Which is what we've noticed. I mean, in my case, I wouldn't care if guys are going to use a bunch of gear as long as they're getting results. That's
Yeah,
their own body. But the thing is, again, I know you've even been critical of CBUM, but the guy's winning even this year. The lack of conditioning, lack of striations, they're just smooth and round, and they're blocky, they're bloated. I mean, you see a lot of round muscles there, but they've got guts. There's no striations to the muscle. You were pointing out some of the side enhancement. The guy who won, Derek, what's his name?
Lumsford, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm not even familiar with him. I haven't followed bodybuilding. And I
Yeah.
checked into all this recently just to see what was going on with the Olympia weekend, and I was kind of shocked because you were pointing out, I think it was you that pointed out to me, he has side enhancement in his lats.
Yeah, well, it kind of looked like it, and there's pictures going all over the internet. I know a lot of your
Yeah.
viewers are probably familiar already with those shots. And I mean, anybody who's been in the sport long enough, we can tell when, when these guys are using these things in certain areas. I mean, no separation between the bicep and the tricep.
Yeah.
The square pointy shoulders that you see,
Yeah.
it's almost commonplace now. It used to be like one or two guys up there. Now,
Yeah, it's everybody.
every single one of them has the same identical, pointy deltoids, and
Right.
the blocky round looks like a solid mass of gelatin or something, right? It doesn't have the fibers, the separation,
There's
and
no
the muscle.
separation. And
Nothing.
that's always a dead giveaway on the side enhancement. Usually, like, especially if they have, and that's what people don't get who haven't been observing this for decades like we have, is that if they're striated everywhere but that muscle, it's full of oil.
Yeah.
So if they've got striated triceps and no striations in the bicep, that bicep is full of oil.
Yeah, I mean, come on. And it's not getting penalized by the judges. So basically these guys are being rewarded for their actions. So it's just being encouraged, and it's become widespread now.
Right.
To the point where I don't even tune into the show anymore. I get enough just by seeing the pictures the next day online, and it's like, yeah, I'm glad I didn't stay up, late last night to watch that, because it's been downhill now for over a decade at least.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's kind of when I tuned out completely from it too. I think people get the impression, because I'm so hard on bodybuilding, that I've always hated it always. And it's like, no, it's not always the case. It used to be an art form.
Yes. Yeah, there was a time.
Yeah, there was a time when it was an art form, and they did look good.
Yes.
I mean,
yeah, we're old enough to remember the guys from the 80s even, right?
Yeah,
they were kids, but
yeah, I mean, even though they were getting kind of pretty big at that point, even Lee Haney still looked good. It was just they were getting monstrously big by then, and then right after that, then it was the insulin era. They just blew up.
Yeah.
Dorian was a monster. He was still striated though, but he was a monster, and that was kind of the insulin era. And then after that, they just started getting hideous, to where it's no longer an art form. Nobody looks good.
No, and I don't think too many people aspire to even look like those guys anymore.
No.
You could take a poll in the gym, and in the 80s, even show guys a picture of like Bob Paris or Lila Brada or something like that, and they'd be like, yeah, I wouldn't mind looking like that, or at least having, chest like him or arms like him. Right. Today, these guys, I mean, even the young guys on the internet, they're like, no, I would never want to look like him, but they still want to see it, they still want to see what they can create.
Yeah. And then they encourage it, but I think they encourage it because they're not even really seeing an alternative there, and they're too young to remember when guys did look different.
Exactly, back when they looked good still.
I mean, they at least know that Arnold and those guys existed.
Yeah, and it's too bad, because I think they attempted, at least the federation, maybe to capture some of that with the invention of the classic division. But then year after year, they kept increasing the weight cap on that too. And then it's gotten to a point now where, from its inception to now, and it's only been about like 7 or 8 years, I guess, they're almost unrecognizable, the two different physiques, right? So it's getting, carried out right out of hand as well, I believe. You see some of these pictures of the Bumstead standing next to the open guys, and he could probably hang with a lot of them too.
Yeah, he's there. He's just as big. And just as much side enhancement starting to appear.
Yes, and that's the thing too, right? And none of the guys in the classic golden era were shooting SEO in their delts and their biceps to try to bring them up a couple inches, right? So it's hard to tell now where the muscle ends and the side enhancement begins sometimes with these guys. And
what a lot of guys aren't getting with that, it's not even side enhancement oil. They're just pinning so much gear that they just use the gear for side enhancement. Like they're not even doing a synthol. Everyone will say synthol. And it's like, no, I mean, some of these guys, you look at what they're taking, and if anyone doubts that, I mean, look at Dallas McCarver's autopsy. And I've said, based upon that blood work and my observation of observing enhanced lifters over the years, I estimated based upon that blood work and the autopsy that he was on 10 grams of test or test equivalent a week at the time of his death. We don't know what he was, 6 months before, but we know when he passed, that was the case. So, people start talking of side enhancement. Well, that is your side enhancement.
That'll do it.
Just put all that in your delts and biceps and you are at synthol level.
Yeah.
Because it's the quantities, because if you think 10 grams, what is that? 40 milliliters of oil. So everyone saw Boston Lloyd saying 3cc, 3cc. Well, you got 40 cc's right there.
Yeah.
Every week. And so when guys are at that point, that is their synthol.
Yes.
It's just testosterone at that point, or nandrolone is their synthol.
Yeah.
And because they've got to put it somewhere. Like logistically, if they're going to, and that's why you're not going to see, I think, as long as they allow the guys to be that big, the side enhancement can't go away because they're pinning so much oil just to get the stuff into their body.
No,
they can't put it all in their glutes.
No, they're running out of real estate, and they're
running out of places to put it. So of course they're going to put it in their delts and biceps. They got to put it somewhere.
Yeah.
And that's what's going to happen, and really your only solution there is scale the size down. Or I think I've heard you say stomach vacuums.
Yeah, I mean, it's been toyed online with the idea for a while that if they made that a mandatory pose, that would probably eliminate like 85% of the roster right off the bat, maybe more, right?
Right.
I mean, I can give Derek Lumsford that much at least. He did pull a vacuum in a few shots, but yeah, Hattie, I believe they can both hit a mild vacuum, anyways. But the rest of the time, it's like transition between poses, and the gut comes back out, or they turn their back to the for the rear double bicep, and boom, it's back out again. So yeah, I mean, they're better at hiding it now maybe than they were a few years ago, but they're still there.
It's still there.
Those physiques are not the same physiques as we grew up watching, and
no, and really your only solution is to size it down, because if they get to the point to where they don't need to put 30 or 40 cc's of oil, and then the side enhancement may go away. If they're not going to score it down, they need to cap the size. Then you cap the size, they won't be using as much insulin, and then maybe they won't have the giant gut. Because I'm convinced that's where the gut comes from.
Well, I mean, nobody's given any explanation that could convince me otherwise, really. It's not the food. I mean, I like when they say it's the food. These guys.
It's not the food.
Yeah. Oh, please. But yeah, that's that would be one way to do it, I guess.
Well, because I've seen guys who've used very heavy doses of growth hormone who don't have distended abs.
No.
So I don't buy that.
No.
So if it's got to be the insulin, and it makes sense because the insulin is going to accrue visceral fat around the organs.
Exactly.
As it continues to create insulin resistance, it's going to accrue that around there, and it's going to distend the gut because their organs are covered in fat. Which again, another health risk.
Yeah. Well, a lot of these guys, they're afraid to even eat a meal with carbs if they're not pinning. You know what I mean? It's and they're making themselves diabetic the rest of their lives at the same time. It's now you're dependent on the insulin forever. Like
right.
Brutal.
It really is. And I don't know what to do about it. No one's going to listen to what I have to say because I'm not even really a bodybuilding guy. Right?
They're valid. It's just it's an observation basically, and something that it's kind of sad because I mean it was always a niche sport, and even though I have pro cards, I'm very reluctant to call bodybuilding a sport. It's not. It's a pageant, but it always had a smaller subculture and a cult following, I guess you could say, and it was still kind of cool back in the 80s and 90s. It was still something where people would be, I mean, you remember they used to play the Arnold Classic on NBC, right?
Yeah.
You could see it on ESPN and
mainstream. I saw Dorian Yates on ESPN.
Right. These days, nobody can tell you who Mr. Olympia is because nobody cares anymore. I mean,
I don't keep up with it.
No, and I don't think they're ever going to get that back. Unfortunately, I think they missed that window of opportunity to really capitalize on it and make it a mainstream thing. And
they could have pulled it off had they just scaled it back.
Yeah.
And I feel like now it's done just to prop up the supplement industry. It exists only to feed the supplement industry.
Yeah.
So then that's always there. Oh, they use these supplements. And
right. And everybody wants the new supplement that tries to mimic what the drugs do because they don't want to do the drugs, but just give me the supplement that does what the drugs does, right?
Right, which
No such-
it's which is comical.
yeah,
I've never understood that mindset. They're like, I don't want to use a drug that helps me gain muscle, but I'll take a supplement that helps me
yeah,
gain muscle. And it's like, but if it has anabolic effects, it's a drug.
yeah,
It's not a supplement. Like,
yeah.
and once it is proven to do that, the FDA will outlaw it because it is now a drug.
Exactly.
And it's just it's a ridiculous mindset, because people have that stigma against steroids. So it's like they want supplements that do the exact same thing that steroids do.
Just so they can say, at least look their mom in the eyes and say, no, I don't do steroids.
Yeah, so they can say they're natural
That's right.
because we've made it that way,
Yeah.
the politics and everything else. But yeah, it's so unfortunate to see kind of what it's become. And
Yeah, it's deteriorated to the point where, like I said, I stopped watching it years ago, and I used to be a diehard. I used to stay up, past midnight, because it was in Las Vegas all the time and watch the live streams and everything. I mean, back in the old days, we had to wait till the magazine came out like a month later.
right,
Somebody might like word from an email or something. It was in the advent of the internet, and you'd find out the winners, but you wouldn't see pictures or videos for several months later.
right,
But then, and that was another thing. They kept making like, I think they kept shooting themselves in the feet with the poor quality of the broadcasting over the years and stuff, and they weren't able to make it like a pay-per-view kind of event. So it
right.
always sucked for viewership that way. And now it's gotten to the point where it's just so grotesque and so unappealing that even fans of the sport and bodybuilders themselves are turned off on it and
Yeah,
lack
yeah,
interest to actually pay attention to it now.
right. Yeah, and I mean that's one of the reasons I hated on it so much on my channel. And I spun it other ways and discussed the other negative parts. But it was always for me. It was how just how bad the modern sport, people
Mm,
that how bad it got. You know,
yeah,
I saw guys die for it.
yeah,
And even during my time as a YouTuber, I know guys who have died. Who were NPC guys
yeah,
trying to go pro, and just that whole lifestyle. They
yeah,
died young, um, because the amounts of stuff they used were in some cases excessive. Then they combined that with party drugs, and that whole scene went that direction. And I think that's the big downside. It's like, well, if I can abuse this drug at really high levels, then I can abuse other drugs at high levels. It almost seems like the logic. So it's like, if I can do 3 or 4 grams of gear and some insulin, and what's some other party drugs,
yeah. Oh,
have
yeah.
that whole party lifestyle around it.
Yeah, and that's always been associated. I can remember back in even the 90s, and a lot of the guys, they were all doing the GHB, a lot of the
Yeah, yeah,
pros. They love that stuff, right?
yep.
And
I remember that.
yeah,
It was talked about.
yeah, oh
I didn't
yeah.
know anyone who did it, but it was talked about.
Yeah.
At the gym, the rumors.
Yeah, yeah, no, there was always a big association of the pros and the party lifestyle and stuff too, especially at the top levels. But it's a reckless lifestyle, I guess, in general. And that's,
Yeah,
and then when you've abused all the anabolics you can, I guess the next thing you turn to is the recreational drugs. And a lot of those guys, even back then, started going down that road. Guys like Mike Matarazzo and them, they were all, playing with those party drugs, and they didn't last too long either.
no, they didn't.
Paul
Yeah,
DeMeo was another one. I think he was
yeah.
hooked on heroin. Even he went like heroin. You wouldn't think a bodybuilder would get mixed up with that, but they
But
start going down.
they were. Look at what happened with Jerry Ward. Admitted all that
Yeah,
in
yeah,
those same circles. He said that back when he was alive, that he got hooked on heroin in the bodybuilding circles
yes,
by hanging
yeah.
around with bodybuilders.
Crazy, right? You think he's maybe okay if you're a rock star or something, or an artist, but a
Well,
bodybuilder?
and I think what he had said at the time was, well, because we all wanted to party, but we didn't want the calories from the alcohol.
Yeah, that was it. And that was the same reason they used for the GHB and stuff too. And I'm like, man, you're better off with the alcohol. And I'm not a proponent of drinking, but come on, man.
Right, right.
Yeah,
It's just insane. But yeah, we were just both noticing that lack of conditioning. And the same thing, it's like you see, they gave that win to Seabaum in classic physique, and I'm like looking at his legs, and it's like the adductors are too massive. It's I'm almost looking at his legs going, he looks like one of those, he looks like a power lifter.
Yeah, yeah, it's
With the leg shape, you know,
yeah,
it wasn't proportioned right.
no,
Not what we think of as the classic physique.
not at all. No, I mean they're restricted by weight. They wear a different posing suit, but other than that, I mean these guys are just a smaller version of the open guys,
They
basically.
really are, yeah. The same
Yeah,
side enhancement, the same, you know,
yeah.
the same stuff. I think it paused. Do we lose our connection?
Yeah,
Oh,
you're
no, there it
back.
goes. There we go. Yeah, pause briefly. Yeah, I mean, I think we had both noted that before too, because people got on me and said, "Oh, you're wrong about his shoulders."
No,
So,
no.
what's your opinion as a serious bodybuilder about C-bum shoulders?
Yeah, no, I mean,
What's going on with them? I don't want to say it so that people don't think I'm leading you. Hey, what's up
yeah,
with his shoulders? What's up with his delts? What's your
if you
opinion
gotta
on his
ask,
delts?
you know the answer is what I say, right?
Well, because I may have said it in a video and people told me that I'm wrong.
Well, I mean, you get the fanboys out there; they never want to face the facts, right? And I guess if
Admit that
you
there's like,
idolize another man that much, then you
yeah.
pill to swallow. But
But
facts
yeah,
is
because
facts.
I said that before. I'm like, his delts are full of so much oil that, like, to me, it hurt to see them. And someone said, "What do you mean?" I'm like, because I know what pit feels like. And
Mhm.
so for me, when I see his shoulders, I feel like an empathetic pain in both of my delts.
Yeah,
Man, I mean, that has to hurt. That can't be comfortable.
no,
And
not
I
at all.
said that, and people had said in the comments, he doesn't have any oil in his shoulders. And I'm
No,
like,
but like you said, just the gear alone, he does have a lot of oil in
yeah,
his
yeah,
can't absorb it at a quick enough rate for how fast they're putting it in there.
yeah, yeah.
Even if it's just anabolics, it's still a site enhancement
It's
at
a slight
that.
enhancement, and it builds scar tissue that stays, you
Yes.
know.
Yeah, and they don't look anatomically correct anymore, these
Yeah.
body parts. If you know enough about
If
anatomy,
you
you
know enough
know,
about anatomy, you know those angles are not right.
no,
And that is the problem with a lot of it. You pin enough of it there, you know, or you get one batch that has too much alcohol or something in it, you'll get scar tissue that'll be there 30 years from now.
yeah, well, you see it in a
That's
lot of
tough.
those guys from the 90s that messed
Well,
with it. Flex Wheeler still has those big cannonball biceps on
yeah,
him,
yeah,
nothing else left his biceps.
yeah,
And Milo Sarcev is another one. He doesn't show his arms too much these days because he's ashamed of it. He's
yeah,
admitted it himself, but it's permanent damage that they do, and it's a
yeah,
permanent enhancement in that area.
yeah, yeah. And not much more really to say about it than other than what we said.
No,
Other than
disappointing, right? Because
it's
we both know.
disappointing because all of us, everyone who lifts, even guys like me who went the strength route later, we all looked up to some of those bodybuilders. Like we were kids, we all saw Arnold in the movies, and we're like, oh man, I want to look like Conan the Barbarian.
Exactly. I still got Tony on my gym wall here, man. I
Yeah,
mean, it started it for me, and I didn't know at the time what I had to do to build muscles. I didn't know it involved lifting weights, but 5, 6 year old boy watching that movie, I want to look like that one
yeah,
day.
I look like that one day, right?
We were on to it. They were, we saw them all in the muscle magazines at the store, and
Sure.
they were still at that time superhero-esque. They still look like Greek statues in a way, and
Yeah, and they were marketed that way.
exactly, yeah. And
Well,
now
and we grew up with wrestling, so.
yeah,
But yeah, the muscle magazines were on at the grocery store, and you don't see that so much today. But when we were kids, you're with mom at the grocery store, you're going to check out, and there's the muscle magazines at the checkout thing with all the magazine racks. So we saw that as kids,
yeah, exactly, man.
and the same thing. We saw the pro wrestlers, and they were, looked like bodybuilders more or
Yeah.
less.
Well, in the
And
80s, they show like there's those memes out there, the action stars of the 80s versus today, and
yeah,
they were all
yeah,
jacked back then. We had the
yeah,
Van Dammes and the wrestlers, and even our GI Joes were jacked. I mean,
yeah.
that was the look back then. That was the whole thing that boys aspired to look like those kind of men.
Yeah, yeah, because that's what, and exactly because those were our heroes.
Yeah,
GI Joe, the wrestlers, uh, not necessarily Terminator, but I guess in Predator, we had Arnold there.
yeah,
All our action movies,
all those guys, man.
Sylvester Stallone,
Yeah, yeah. But now
and
the same deal. Like, how many bodybuilders of recent days have made it into mainstream movies? None of them, because the directors
yeah,
and producers aren't going
they
to
don't
put
want
them.
them. I
There's
mean,
no.
you have the Rock who looks like a bodybuilder, but he was already famous before he got that big.
his physique improved after he retired from wrestling, actually,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. You go back and look at his physique from wrestling, and at the time, he was impressive. I
Yeah.
mean, but you would take his physique right now and talk about it from a competitive physique perspective. People
Yeah.
would say, "Oh, he looked like trash,"
I
but he
know.
was but he was making millions of dollars and famous for his physique
Yeah.
at the time.
Yeah. I know.
You know, and then to the mainstream audience, though, even today, that would still look good.
Yeah.
You would take the Rock when he was a wrestler and show him to the average person today, and they would say, "Wow, he's insanely jacked."
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we get that walking down the street.
Yeah.
It's it's
Sometimes.
it's it's it's, it's so funny how the physique world and the online fitness community views people versus the real world.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
This-
yeah. I mean, it's because they're not exposed to that, so they don't see that because it's no longer in the mainstream. No one sees it.
That's right.
Yeah, to the average person, you and I look like superheroes. It's hilarious, you know.
Doesn't
They
take
don't,
much to stand out
well,
these.
you obviously do look better than me, but I mean, the thing is, uh, but the thing is, even I, by internet standards, I catch so much flack on the internet, and then I walk down the street and people will stop me and
Yeah.
talk, you know, ask me for workout advice or comment. You know, it's hilarious
Yeah.
because the real world perception versus what the fitness world is showing are completely different.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, it's just it's so funny. But yeah,
Yeah.
we were exposed to a different view, you know, and they still looked like Greek statues back then.
Yeah, yeah, and you could tell one from the other, man. Like you could stand them behind a white curtain, and just by their silhouette, you knew that was Arnold, that was Frank
Oh
Zane.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, even today, you and I still know that. We see that, we know who that is,
yeah,
you know, but these guys today, you can't, you know,
just big globs. They all look
yeah,
like
yeah. I mean, maybe Ronnie Coleman would stand out
he was probably the
because
last
he
one.
was there was kind of unique. But he was such a genetic freak on so many levels, anyways.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
and he was taller too. I think that's worth mentioning too. The last two Olympias now, they were both former 212 guys. I mean,
yeah,
Lance first won the 212 class, at the Olympia, and Hattie was a 212 guy for years too.
yeah,
They're both like 5'5", 5'6" on a good day.
yeah,
You know what I
yeah. Well,
So the days of
bodybuilders are shorter than people realize. We only have a
yeah,
few minutes left. That's gonna let me
are.
record this, but I've been to events and was shocked myself at the actual heights of the guys versus the
Uh,
advertised heights. And I'm like, dude, all these Olympia competitors are like 5'6".
yeah, they're small dudes, man, and I met them all, over the
Yeah.
years. I remember when the first time I met Kai Green, and I'm like towering over this guy. You'd think
I
he's
was too.
big, man.
I've met him too, and it was
He's,
funny because
five
well,
foot eight.
yeah, he's listed as 5'8" online,
Yeah,
but in person, I'm like, there's no way you're 5'8" because you're like up to here, and there's no
even
way.
5'8".
Yeah. So, but they were a different height back then. I mean, Arnold was whatever. I know. I think they fudged his height a little. He was probably closer to 5'11" or whatever. I think they used to say he was 6'1", but then I've heard it later. He was a little under that because they always like to fudge. They like to exaggerate the numbers.
Oh, sure. Kind of put the wrestling kind of twist on it too, like
Yeah, they did. Hulk
under
Hogan's
the.
24-inch pythons.
But yeah, I mean, I don't see it getting any better, anytime soon. I mean, it's getting to the
Yeah.
point now where it's like I don't even follow pro bodybuilders online. I could care less anymore about any of it because
And
it's just
well, and as far as even the mainstream and people who are new into working out, they're not following it either. There are
no.
more people who know the name of their favorite fitness influencer than they know anybody who's at the Olympia this year.
Exactly. I bet you guys like YouTubers and stuff have bigger accounts than some of these pros and more
Yeah.
followers and fans because they appeal to the masses, right?
Yeah.
Where these guys, even in their little subculture, this little niche fraction of the fitness world, they're not even appealing to that anymore.
Right, they're not. And it's the judge's fault. It's the organization's fault. They could have fixed it.
Yeah, no, they could have. And, Arnold was one of the few that has been vocally, opposed to a lot of the standards these days and stuff
Yeah.
too. They kind of, I guess, maybe some suspected they followed his suggestions by starting the classic division or whatever. But
But
then,
they didn't go anywhere with it. Yeah, they
oh,
don't they just look
dude,
like they look like the open guys did just not that long ago.
exactly, man, no
Yeah.
difference. Yeah,
Yeah.
but Yeah, and I don't see them going back to the old standard anytime soon either. So I
No,
guess bodybuilding will just die a slow, miserable death eventually. And
pretty much. It's just going to go the way of influencers.
yeah, it might not be a bad thing either. Maybe it'll
Might
be
not.
re
Hey, you might be reborn. You might be
yeah,
reborn.
yeah.
You know? Well, because I think anyone who doesn't seen you on LinkedIn thing, they'll be kind of shocked at what you look like. You know, you're like, oh, he's
Yeah.
serious. He really is an aesthetic lean jack dude.
I did all right for a natural guy, I guess, Canada, but I've been around the sport and I've been around the pros and even the local guys in Southern Ontario and stuff since the 90s. So,
Yeah.
I've had exposure to the dark side of bodybuilding as
Yeah.
well, and seeing, what it takes to get to that level, and
Yeah.
hearing from these guys who have tried for
I've met enough. Like even when I trained at Iron City, I met a lot of guys who were at that point and met a couple of IFBB people, and you start chatting with them, and it's like the the stuff they put into their bodies. Some guys just trying to go pro is astronomical.
yeah,
Like if people really wouldn't believe it. So they
no,
don't understand how much these people use, because people say something and they're thinking, oh, maybe they use a gram of stuff. And I'm like, a day,
yeah, yeah, no kidding.
it's like, and then they think that you're joking. And it's like, no, I mean, I've had friends who I've known who were trying to go pro, and that is, they were using a gram a day.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it's just, it's mind blowing.
It is, yeah, and it's unfortunate. And the sad part is, it's still the biggest fanfare, I think, is probably like teenage boys,
Yeah.
who are so easily influenced and impacted by these guys that they'll follow everything,
They
and they
follow
think,
everything and they don't have the judgment to know any better.
no,
It's one thing for us at our age and experience to go, that's insane. Like
hmm
you shouldn't even be entertaining putting that many drugs into your body, no matter what your goal is. Because
no,
you're like, you won't make it to our age. You will be dead before you're our age.
yeah,
You will not survive.
yeah,
But to them, they're not thinking that. And I've heard a younger guy who was getting into bodybuilding say in person with some of that, he's like, yeah, but even if I burn out a little early, I might get 10 years of glory.
oh my God, I
And
can tell.
it's like a 22-year-old kid saying this. And it's like,
Oh God, there's no glory in bodybuilding. There's no glory, there's no money, there's no fame, and in 10 years, nobody's going to remember who
nobody's
these
gonna remember.
top 20 guys were today either, because
They won't know, they won't care.
history, and nobody really cares. I'm sorry, but they just don't.
I heard a pro say that in an interview some years ago, that it doesn't matter. He goes, because, and it was an anonymous thing supposedly. Um, but he had said, and it won't matter because we're all replaceable. He goes, so what? They just use us up. We can die and they can replace us with the next batch of naive kids.
Sad but true, isn't it? Yeah.
And their business goes on. They'll still keep selling their magazines, keep selling their supplements and their
Yeah.
tickets to their expos, and they don't care.
Nope. No, the IFB is going to keep IFBBing, and with or without you.
Yeah.
There's a pension plan in the IFBB, so yeah.
So it's just going to continue.
Yeah.
And I, like I said, I agree with you. I think bodybuilding is just going to die a slow death.
Yeah.
And it's just going to be replaced by the popular influencers.
Yeah, pretty much. It looks
Better
like
for worse. And all of us can do is try to put out good information to counter the bad that some of them are putting out.
yeah,
But
and
you get a few smart ones. You do get some who
sure.
who are there. I don't mean to bash and say everyone who's putting out information.
No.
Because there are plenty out there, but you got to dig through them.
Yes. Yeah, and it's part of my, probably I spend most of my time as a coach and a trainer is just helping people wade through the waters of misinformation, because as you know, in the fitness industry, I mean, geez, it's more bullshit than truth out there,
It
and
is. It's more bullshit than truth. And
no one.
no one wants to correct the shit because they're financially invested in the bullshit they put out.
Yeah.
So then they can't, once they put it in an ebook and they're selling that ebook, they can't change their stance.
No.
And yeah, they're losing money. All right, well, we probably need to start winding this down because it's putting a restriction on this. We didn't use the normal software I normally use because you couldn't get logged in. But,
Okay.
it was good having you on here, Nico. I'm going to link your social media down below underneath the video so that people can go check it out. Of course,
Appreciate.
you're like me, you coach, you got open slots, and I don't mind people going and checking out some of my friends. If I'm not the right coach and not the right pricing for you, consider Nico as an alternative. I've known you close to 15 years. I can vouch for your training knowledge. I can vouch for your coaching. Your clients get results.
As do yours, my friend.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
That's what happens when you help people instead of taking care of your bottom line first, and you're generally invested in your clients, and it shows, man. And you're one of the good guys in the industry. So I'm happy to be on your show and speaking with you.
I'd appreciate it, man. So I'm going to go ahead and wind this down. I'll talk to you guys next time.